that there was one more stream of research which was being done. They were trying to get the users' data by letting them know. But in return, the way we would want to use that data is that we would have their actual personality scores and their complete music listening history. But what we are trying to say is that this is the paradigm which we are trying to face,
Okay.
that there might be certain dominant personality traits which you have, which will be associated to the particular emotions. So emotions from the lyrics can be used in music recommendation systems for recommending similar songs. So yes, definitely there is a reason that you might want to choose maybe an Apple Music or a Spotify, because these apps have been becoming so good in the music recommendation that what all we care about is music recommendation. We do
Hmm.
not want to consider any other factor, but till the time the music recommendation is good, we definitely like the fact that yes, the next music is something which I would want to hear and I don't want to like interact physically to the system. Today we see that ChatGPT has evolved in a dynamic nature. The new thing come in, it already knows. When you are enacting to your music, it can help us predict your music preferences as well. That is what kind of music you would want to listen. That would actually help us in keeping track of the personality, and generative AI can actually solve this problem of tracking this thing over time instead of just giving you hard intuitive results for a statistical time. So yes, definitely there is a reason that you might want to choose maybe an Apple Music or a Spotify. These apps have been becoming so good in the music recommendation that what all we care about is music recommendation.
People can kind of infer who are close to each other and what kind of activities they perform together, all these targeted ads. It's an insane amount of data. Now, most of the inference happens from browsing. How do you label that data? Like when you're training model, and you're using it in a supervised setting, right? You're training it in a supervised setting. How do you label such things, especially with dancers? Because there are two kinds of things. One was using the active one, which was the dancing or producing music, and the other one, which is the passive one. In the passive one, you can sort of do some sort of weak supervision based on the time, because that's the thing that you focused on. But for the active one, what was the like? How did you get the data from, like labeled and all of that? And
Okay.
just to add to what Debayan saying, I'm wondering all of your accuracy that you have. So one thing which you talked about earlier was mood, right? So the mood of a person can act as noise in that data. So how does that kind of factor into the whole system as well?
That is one of the very key things which any reviewer would want to see how we have tried to deal with the things like the mood, and maybe there will be few things like gender and age as well. So as the age might differ, your understanding of the music would also differ. And if you are doing on a very skewed data on let's say on all the child or all the very old age people, you would not very well able to collect all the nuances of the things around it. So definitely there are few factors which are considered to be very important. So when this data was actually procured by us, so luckily this data was being recorded back in, so we had two data sets being used. One was from the 2014. It was from the Brigetta L. paper, again from the Finland University of Jyväskylä. And another was a recent data set, I guess it was around somewhere around 2018 or 2019. So the idea behind capturing that was that firstly, we are trying to deal with untrained professionals. Those should not be trained professionals, because if they are trained professionals, then all the nuances of music induced moment completely goes away when you're just looking the joints. Because over there you do not know who is dancing and how they are trying to enact. You're just having the joints being moved. So definitely we wanted to have a diversity in the based of what kind of how much amount of musical background which they have. If they're trying to enact on a music to us, then definitely that parameter is also something which should be controlled by us.
Right.
So we wanted to vary that factor as well. So, and the last and most important thing was that if I am trying to embody a music and I want to enact in the form of dance, I would be very well different in the different genres aspect. So that is if I am trying to like capture a data set, and each individual would require to let's say down on 20 to 50, 20 to 30 excerpts. That is
Okay.
those excerpts of music would lie to different musical genres, be it reggae, be it jazz, or be it as strong as hip hop or pop music. So they were trying in all the like in a control setup, they were required to move in different excerpts where we can try to mitigate all those nuances to as minimum as possible. But definitely things like mood and all would come into picture. but they kind of, in a way, they just go away when we try to incorporate different genres around it, because your mood being happy and the music being happy can
I
definitely
see.
make some connection around it. But when your mood is happy and you're listening to sad, then all those nuances would kind of average out when you're trying to deal with different
Okay.
Yeah.
genre of the music.
You're reducing the variable. You basically you're making it control by just asking them to do all kinds of this thing
Yes,
variations.
yes, yes.
I see.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I think music is also such a thing where you often can get lost into it. So given enough genres, you're probably just going to end up reacting to that genre.
One of the
Anyway,
questions I had was why music? Why did you choose to go behind music as your modality for research? And you just answered it.
Yeah, I think music is something which can be structured and unstructured at both at the same time.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
the way you want to see the music, you can completely see the music. As we talked about, that past research was completely based on acoustic. It was, I would say, it was more like a structured acoustic sound, and you would see that even if you have a different paradigm of lyrics, the beats of the music will be mostly overlapping with time. The way they
Mm,
try to synthesize the music is that they would try to create a beat and they would try to loop it over time. And when you're trying to deal with the unstructured thing, which is lyrics, each and every paragraph can be talking about a completely whole different paradigm, but they are trying to bring it in under a single umbrella, which they try to like, which is like the song is all about. So when you're trying to deal with both the acoustic as well as the lyric aspect of the music at the same time, you're trying to actually diversify your thoughts on whatever you want to like actually bring in into the picture, and you can actually focus on that particular thing, and I think you would have enough information of what you're trying to see towards.
So this was the part that you're telling us about the correlation of the personality with the like the kind of music that someone listens to, right? And the other, both ways also. The music can induce some sort of emotion in you.
Yeah, I
So I have
think we talked mostly on the fronts of how we are trying to deal with the active engagement of things.
hmm,
And in the passive engagement, what we have tried to deal with is mostly about how we are trying to extract the emotions from the lyrics.
correct,
So
correct, correct.
now to boil it down to the point that once we have the emotions from a song, how we are trying to correlate it with the personality and what is the actual whole picture behind it.
Hmm,
Because one thing is that we try to do it for the active engagement. Over
hmm,
there, we have all those important feature vectors which come out, and that's where we directly correlate with them. And but now when we have the emotions for a song, so like this was the part of study which used to deal with the passive engagement, and we wanted to
hmm,
investigate how like individual differences, specifically the personality, are associated with the kind of emotional experiences one seek from the lyrics. So we chose to investigate the lyrics specifically because they are underexplored in the field of music information retrieval, despite them like playing the crucial role in eliciting emotions. So we expect, based on previous research, that showing that individual differences are associated with the lyrics from their favorite music, as listeners use them to use them to satisfy their individual psychological needs, to find relations between personality trait and the emotions conveyed through lyrics of their preferred music. So we hypothesize the fact that individual differences should be associated with the emotional experiences one seeks, as it occurs naturally on the online music listening platforms. And this study will also help in understanding the relations between the personality traits and the music conveyed through the lyrics.
so basically what you're saying, I think something that you touched upon is um, you specifically look at playlists that have been compiled by people, favorites or something, playlists that have been compiled for people, because that is more accurate in um,
No, that was the premise of how people were trying to consume music. And with the
okay.
favorite music, what we can try to see is that when they consume that their set of favorite music, these are the set of emotions which they want to induce. Like we talked about both the
Oh,
fronts. As a
okay.
particular personality, as belonging to a particular personality, I would want to listen to songs in my own way.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
other way of the coin was that since I know what my personality is, since I already like
Can
that
you get
song,
What
can
are
you
the
I
get me
songs
would
you
similar?
recommend to that person?
I would want to maybe listen to that specific song at a particular time because I know that this is a kind of emotion which will be induced in my body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, like for the field psychology of music, this study helps us like gain insight in the relationship between the individual differences and the musical preferences for certain kinds of emotionally laden lyrics. So we can say that people with certain dominant personality trait prefer particular emotion songs over the others. We might not be finding correlations of every personality with every
Gotcha.
relations, but what we are trying to say is that this is the paradigm which we are trying to face.
Okay.
That there might be certain personality, like certain dominant personality traits which you have, which will be associated with the particular emotions. So emotions from the lyrics can be used in music recommendation systems for recommending similar songs into
Okay.
that particular song
Mhm.
session.
One
Oh,
thing I want to
so
know is so you said there are particular dominant traits, right? So has your study come up with something along the lines of certain personality types is there something like that that you have found out that certain personality types would like X kind of music, right? And
Yes.
potentially what I'm thinking about is often there has been a lot of correlation between a person's personality type and maybe their profession, possibly even their career growth, their ambitions, and things like that, right? So I'm just trying to understand that if that kind of conclusion has come from your study. Like, could you just give some examples, maybe?
Yeah,
Like
sure.
X sort of personality type has maybe likes that kind of music, or
and this also is like is I will add to this because I had a question which was related to this. Is this publicly available somewhere where maybe there's a website where you can go ahead and say like, hey, like you have a personality test. There is MBTI, there's a five this one, right? Factors one. But is there some place where people can go and check that maybe this is the like this is my personality type, this is maybe the kind of emotions that I would relate to?
So first, I will try to answer the Bayan questions.
okay,
So to be honest, at my time of research, those kinds of sites were not publicly available, and the reason was that it's not feasible to have that site online. The reason being, you might want to like find out what a particular personality type is.
Hmm.
You would have an option to go to a site. You might want to choose your like that this is the specific music listening stream or the platform which I'm using, but that platform might not be very well willing to share the data, or there can be a reason of how that data would want to be processed. And biggest drawback at that point of time was that many research like today we see that ChatGPT has evolved in a dynamic nature. The new thing come in, it already knows. At that point of time, let's say if I have already made the model understand the fact that this particular song has this emotion embedded to it. As the music industry evolves, there will be new and new music coming out.
Yes.
Each of the music might not be very well trained by the model. Like it's possible now, but at that time that was not very well feasible. That we could not have all those very generic models in place where you can actually go and put your username and we would be able to fetch all that information and give you a cumulative results. It was all possible in the past data, and that's where it was restricted towards.
sorry, before you get to my previous question, I have another one. I just have so many questions, man. So interesting, right? You're talking about one piece of music, kind of emotions it can evoke. What I'm thinking about is if the same kind of music if the same kind of music can evoke different kinds of emotions, depending on maybe what has happened to the singer. Maybe the singer dies, or the singer is in news, is in some kind of scam, and these can kind of be used in predicting trends and things like that, right? This is like, I don't know.
Right.
Typically what happens is, if let's say some specific person is in the news for certain XYZ reason, correct? Then consumption of their content typically tends to go up, right? Now, if you can control like why they are in the news, people just try to sensationalize and come into the news for all kinds of reasons. If you can control why you are coming into the news, and therefore that can control the kind of emotion that is evoked from that music, therefore resulting in maybe more consumption of certain kinds of their content, it can become like something that
I
is
think
gameable, right?
that's definitely there, right? The acoustic. I'm guessing the recommendation systems would already take the acoustic signature into account because especially yesterday, like I was watching a product launch video. The kind of music that was used was like all upbeat and something massive is happening. I mean, it's a very intentional choice of music, right? And even now with the transcript, maybe because now you have a system of given the text that is being talked about, map it to it's basically sentiment analysis, right?
Mm.
Sentiment from the transcript that if you link that with the acoustic signal also, I'm guessing there are already models which are talking about from the acoustic signature, what is the sentiment. I hazard a guess that I think recommendation systems already use this to promote some trends or not, depending on that.
I don't know. Like, do they actually take into the account news or some of the latest stuff in some of
100%.
these recommendations?
100%.
I don't know. Like, so I've seen stuff on YouTube. YouTube is pretty common in pushing things which
Hmm.
are popular and in the news, but I haven't seen so much from pure music platforms like
Oh,
Spotify or
music
Apple.
platforms. No. I
Yeah.
was thinking about social media and they definitely do.
No, not social media. So, more in context of music is what I was thinking. That kind of content, right? So YouTube, of course, it does a lot of stuff and it's very, very topical in nature. But I don't know if the music platforms use this kind of information, like what's hot and happening otherwise, and therefore such kind of content is.
So my take on this would be actually on this view that, let's say if you're right now, as you said, Abhinav, that you are right now going with YouTube music. So there is a
Mm,
specific reason that you are going with the YouTube music right now. And how does it actually come into the picture is that you as an individual want to be ahead of the game, right?
mhm.
So you would want your music platform or any of the services which you're using keeps you ahead in the game. And how that would be
Okay.
possible is that, let's say there is a news. When we're trying to, let's say when the song is being recommended, the
Hmm.
song is being recommended based on the previous songs which you have listened to, and that elicit
Mm,
specific emotion. Now,
mm.
I would want to recommend a specific emotion, a song to you which elicits specific emotions.
The same kind of emotion.
I have a set of songs which I can push any of the song, and that you will
Mm,
definitely like. How
mm,
these big players actually use the news as an information is that they might know a certain music, like certain singer who are actually trending, and
mm,
they would want to actually give that particular song a priority which belong to that singer, which belong to that emotion, and they can push that song to you. Now what it is doing is that it is actually recommending you a song of what kind of emotion you are trying to listen, but you are
mm,
trying to listen to a specific singer which might not be diversifying the artist which you're listening to, but actually when you are talking to your friends, it's again coming to the social acceptability that you are actually
mm.
listening to the song some time back itself.
Right.
So this is how the big players are using all the data at once to push
The
what they want you
deals.
to listen.
That's what I was going to touch on. The social engineering aspect of
Social
it.
accept. Yeah,
Social
exactly. Social
engineering.
acceptability.
So you're trying to, and then what is continuously going on in my mind is the explore section in Instagram or something like TikTok, maybe, right? Where this could be a very key signal. And I would hazard a guess. I mean, I have not worked on those systems, obviously, but I would be very surprised if this info is not being used already in the recommendation system. I have worked in recommendation systems, so
Yeah,
Very
I think
interesting.
all of these are now labeled as metadata, but I think metadata is the most important data of the data right now.
yeah.
True, true. Very
Yeah,
true.
and now Abhinav, coming back to your question where you were trying
Mm,
to ask me that when a person is, let's say, dancing, do we know from their dance movement, do they like a specific music or not? To answer that question, it would be more into the fronts like we discussed how we can actually take into the advantage that some particular group, like a group of people, might want to enact to a music in a certain way. For
mhm.
example, let's say someone belonging to extroversion category. You can very well expect from them that if they are listening to, let's say, EDM song or a hip hop song, they would definitely indulge in things like headbanging. That's a very common trait
Okay.
that they would do headbanging, and you would know that yes, they are trying to enjoy the music and beat any
Okay.
kind of music. They will be mostly trying to like play around with their fingers and play around with the head. They were trying to toggle the head a lot. So
Okay.
based on how you are trying to enact a particular music, we can definitely talk about what particular personality you fall into.
Mm,
Once I know this particular step is achieved, we have great amount of evidences which talks about the fact that when you belong to a specific personality, what kind of affinity, well, like what affinity you will have to different songs. That is based on their personality. We know certain correlations with the different music genres. So
okay.
all in all, considering the transitive property in picture, given that uh, dance movements can correlate with your personality and personality correlates with the music preferences, as studied also in one of the journals which we had published, we talk about the point that how when you are enacting to music can help us predict your music preferences as well. That is what kind of music you would want to listen and not just
Okay.
about your personality.
Okay. Can you just give me an example? Like, so you said an extroverted person, right? So let's just assume that you have, I think there are several. The personality model that you're talking about, the 5 personalities, what are they?
So those are 5 personalities, namely being openness,
Okay.
conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion, and neuroticism.
Okay.
So
And can
if you
there
would
be like
want,
overlaps between these?
so there are no overlap between these, but
Okay.
how the ocean model is evaluated is that, let's say if I want to evaluate the personality of you
Hmm.
would not be belonging to a certain personality. You will have each of the personalities, but you will be high on one of the
Percentages.
personalities.
Okay. Okay.
Percentages
So it's a
would be.
Yes.
probability kind of
So
thing.
it's
Okay.
about that. I will also have some kind of a neurotic nature to myself. I will have, since I am goal oriented,
I
I
see.
do definitely know that I have a conscientiousness category towards things, and I am
Okay.
open to experiences like adventures. So I know that I have openness.
Mm.
So I
Okay.
will be scoring high on these personality
Certain
traits,
of these. Okay.
and I would be scoring less on the agreeableness. So
I
definitely,
see.
we talk about the holistic view that you can belong to few personalities, and you
Okay.
can be, those personalities then again correlate to few music preferences. So over there, the overlap comes.
Got it.
That since you belong to more than one personality, like you are not very high on single personality, and each other personality can have their own set of music preferences. Then that's where the
Okay.
overlap comes. That
Got it.
you and me as a different individual can have a certain liking to a specific song.
So this is
Got it.
actually like I have to bring this up because it's very contextual to this. We're discussing about the personality model, right? So there are different personality models that are available. The 5 personality model, and there's MBTI also. Which, according to
TIPI.
you, first of all, it matters which personality model you're using. Does like what are the and is one personality model better suited for this kind of a research than the other because of some reason?
Yeah, I think it would be more an open-ended question, so I would not have definite answers towards it. But I can actually talk about why we opted to choose for the BFI, that is Big Five inventory. So when you definitely want to do your research and you want to take advantage of the past research, the first primary thing which you try to look at is what is the corroboration which this particular research work has gotten in past, or how much acceptance this particular work has got. Big Five inventory is something which most of the psychologists or they would try to agree upon that this model is something which works great. When we talk about things like TIPI, which is 10 inventory personality model, that is again 5 personality based. We have seen models in the past where they are trying to deal with just 2 or 3 personalities, and then again, we have seen models which have tried to model out things in more than 5 personalities. But the whole argument where people would want to settle in the 5 personality model is that this is a place where there are good amount of segregation and has the least amount of overlap. As you go forward and develop more, let's say 10 branches out of a personality, then you would see a lot of overlap between two different personality. And the stream of research which you wanted to pursue, we would not want to confuse between two different personalities having overlaps between them. So our specific idea was we are trying to isolate the personalities in general, so we don't want an overlap there. And that's how we went ahead with the Big Five inventory model. And that's
Okay.
actually it's mostly largely accepted. So that was one of the, again, primary reason of choosing that.
It's quite thought provoking. I'm expecting that people would have multiple questions after listening to all of this and the many different things that they would want to know about. Hopefully, we get comments about this and they would spark some thoughts on in you also, right? As for further maybe exploration. And I have a question about this, right? So this kind of the model that you're talking about, this is more from a engineering standpoint rather than the statistical standpoint, right? That what kind of models are involved in this? Like, what is model architecture? And usually, do you like what kind of runtimes are involved when you deploy these? Can these be sort of run on device? Because in the context of these music streaming services, right? Can something like this be done on your phone? Can it be real time?
So the way I would want to answer it is in two parts. So we have discussed in our research work that we have tried to like segregate our research work in active listening engagement and
Hmm.
passive
Passive.
listening engagement. Active listening engagement is something which we feel is more statistical and less computationally expensive. What what I'm trying to say is that my model suggests that if a person is moving in a certain manner, I can actually tell the personality of a person, right? So I can tell you that my research work involved me having those 3D joints of those 21 pointers being placed on someone's body, and we were able to use that data. But all the research which I did alongside Abhinav and the research how it has evolved, we know at this current time that in real time it is possible that if you point a camera to a specific person, in real time it would be able to actually tell a mocap data of yours. Mocap data is nothing, just the motion capture data,
Hmm.
which is that just by a monocular RGB image, monocular RGB video, I can actually pinpoint each and every 21 pointers or n pointers around your body in real time. And same in the real time, our model can actually plot out. So that thing is very much possible on the very handheld devices like phone or mobile cameras. When you're coming to the things like passive engagement, over there, it might seem a easier problem, but over there, the domain is actually pretty large. To consider things like if you are to consider different songs, you have to consider not only their acoustic aspect of things, but also their lyrical and tag aspect. That is different modalities of a particular song. So when
Hmm.
you're trying to bring into the picture of different modalities, and let's say there are in almost millions and billions of songs available, having those compute operations can be tough. So as of now, I am not very sure of that thing can be done in real time, but definitely it can be done with some kind of big systems, and they would be able to take advantage of high memory caching,
Hmm.
and they would be able to do it in real time as well.
So one thing is we can divide into two parts, right? One is that something you extract metadata which is specific to the song, which is local, like for given the song info, the lyrics, all of that, you're extracting the emotions that are there, the potential personality type. And
Yes.
then there's the retrieval aspect of it and the recommendation aspect of it, right? Once
Yeah.
you have each data point tagged with all of that, then which are the ones which are closest to you? I think dividing
So
the first part could probably be
so
done
the
one divided.
retrieval aspect is something which is considered to be less computationally expensive because it's about you how you want to train the model and how big the model you want to put over there. So that is something which can be actually handled in real time quite easily. When you
There are
consider
existing
things as a
systems, correct?
yeah, when you consider things like a statistical data of me having knowledge of millions of data and metadata points of those million data. So that keeping that thing into the picture. And that thing is something which is more computationally expensive and computationally expensive to preserve. It's not computationally expensive to like process on top of it. The expense is just the data is so huge as of now that we don't have very good kind of clustering mechanism that I can actually treat n different songs as one. If I'm treating each and different songs differently, then it's a lot of pre-compute which I'm trying to preserve, and that becomes a lot more computationally intensive.
No, I understand. So this for this part, there are I think the approximate nearest neighbor search, the HNSW indices you can create to sort of speed up. At least from my experience here in such engines, this part can be done. It's doing approximate neighbor search. But the stamping
Mhm.
part of it, right? Getting the emotion from the song, for instance, in the passive one.
Yes.
So that is, if I understand, you're saying it's a transformer model, right?
Yeah, it's a transformer model, but again, as we know that there are more mobile net and all those comings in. So
Hmm.
definitely the compute operation which we used to do, even we were able to like train our 2500 songs. We were
Hmm.
actually dealing with data set which had 2600 songs. And we
Hmm.
were deploying when we were trying to deploy our deep learning model that is the transform on top of it, we were able to complete our end-to-end testing into training everything in 8 minutes of time, that
Hmm.
too which involves a different epochs. It was
Hmm.
not like a very huge data set which you are trying to deal with, but again this thing was not so computationally expensive that everything was we were able to deal almost at the real-time scale.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
actually makes sense because what that enables you to do is if you have new information being incorporated, right? As each and every user listens to more and more music, it's quite easy to kind of model that much faster. I think that's one. And the second aspect of it is all of this processing is all based on passive only, right? Like how do you actually in practical uh, do active engagement? Who's going to be willing to actually put their camera out while they're listening to music, right? Practically most of it is passive, like unless you're doing something like
Correct.
looking at
Correct.
existing movies or
Like
like, I
someone's
don't
going to
know,
dance
right?
studio,
YouTube
maybe
videos,
they're attending
dance
dance
studios or something,
classes.
and then doing
Then
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Or maybe it's a recorded therapy session and you're trying to like do something of that kind. But for the mass public, most of it, I presume, has to be passive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as you said, recorded experiences. It could
Mm.
be again in the fronts of it goes into the fronts of AR and VR. If you want to have an whole immersive experience of gaming or something, then actually
Mm.
putting a camera helps me identify what kind of emotion you are trying to delve into, and I can make the scenarios the way I want to plot it out in
So
your gaming experience.
this while you guys were discussing this, like one thought struck me again. This is
That's actually interesting. Mm.
yeah, like one of the key customers who would be interested in this, right? Like not just the music streaming service, because we've been talking about music streaming services all along, but anything which like the curated experiences where your sound engineers are required. For instance, even theme parks, or there are
Yeah.
companies which are built on these kind of audio visual immersive experiences, VR and AR, right? Would be super interesting signals to have there, because and there
Yeah.
you have these feedback loops, because there are sensors which are there as part of the setup completely, like this it's not set up separately, and
Yeah.
you're being observed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
With the existing AR VR setup and with the rise of generative models coming to the picture, then convergence of these two fields can definitely create a lot more dynamic stuff than we
Mm.
tend to imagine at this point of time.
Yeah, you feed these signals into generative AI and think about what are
Yes.
different things. So actually, that's something that we wanted to touch upon, like your thoughts on generative AI and where this field you see, at least from your context, where this evolving to.
So actually, one of the toughest point, which like the challenge, most challenging point, which I had seen by the end, I was like, I completed my so part of research was that how, like we were talking it in the very initial point was that how we can actually keep track of ever-changing personality based onto the ever-listening songs which you have continuously, because existing research and whatever it exists right now try to divide your complete listening history although into the sessions, but once we have the information of all the sessions is when I can actually tell your personality. What we are trying to deal with right now is that once you have the songs ever listening, how can I actually keep track of your personality?
Mm, mm.
So that is something which was most tough. Now, given generative AI into the picture, this seems very much more achievable. That once you have that generative knowledge of things, you can actually keep track of those things just by keeping some kind of distance type of metrics. But that would actually help us in keeping track of the personality, and generative AI can actually solve this problem of tracking the thing over time instead of just giving you hard intuitive results for a statistical time.
But why would generative AI specifically be, suitable for this? Because that's essentially something that any technique that deals with time series data, right? Any
Yeah,
time series forecasting or tracking, for instance. And
yeah. So generative AI, what we believe is that it would be able to like grasp a sense of music which you would want to hear in future, and that would not only help in generative what kind of music would want to hear, but how generative AI can actually bring into the experiences that the music or something might not actually want to exist at that particular time. Let's say consider AR VR scenario where you are trying to play in a particular game. Given, let's say you are on a roller coaster, you can have like spike in two different types of emotion. Specifically, one being scared, that you're a lot of scared, and second thing, how enthused you are or how much you are enjoying. Let's say the
if you're
air
an
being pumped
adrenaline
upon your.
junkie,
So when you have that generative AI into the picture, it can actually curate the experiences according to you. If you are an adrenaline junkie, it can push more and
I
more
see.
scary materials around you. And if you are, let's say, if you are less of an adrenaline junkie, but if you are more towards a specific side, it can actually dwell something completely different for you. So generative AI is about bringing the AI immersive experience to it. I'm not talking about any dystopian thing,
Yeah.
but it is about how it can actually better your experience with your AI.
Personalize, how it
AI
can
stuff.
personalize
Personalized,
your
Yes.
extremely
experience,
personalized.
hyper
Yes.
Yeah.
personalization, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is really nice. I did not think about it this way.
Yeah.
Based on your personality type, even the roller coaster example, very nice example. Depending on how scary you are, mellow it down maybe. Oh, sorry, how scared you
Yes.
are, mellow it down, and otherwise, like you're a little junkie like me, then just make it, even more YOLO swords. Throw in maybe a skydive in it. Something like
This is actually very interesting because you have all these AR, VR, was that Smash, and so many of these
That's
companies.
what came to
Yes.
my mind. The
Yeah,
curated
exactly. So
experiences,
there's
right? That's
this, yeah, exactly. I think that will be a great selling point. Be a great selling point for a lot of
yeah.
companies. A lot to think for, actually.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit overwhelmed because I did not really think about multiple things. One was the whole correlation between it coming from just poses, all the way till personality, from there connecting to emotion,
Yes.
right? That aspect of it, and then we also looked at the aspect where how this can very beautifully incorporate into AR VR as well. Right? Just
Yeah.
because you have a camera, you have like the ability to capture all of these things. So in terms of that, I think there are so many problems that can actually be addressed in this space.
And the reason why we believe in the efficacy of the system is, as we talked about, that this is the system which we are talking about all in the wild setup, where you
Yeah.
cannot actually curate your experience, where you are actually experiencing it in the real time, and you cannot lie about something. So it's about something which can be whole lot more immersive and a lot more to play around with.
There's so many different things here, right? And I mean, we've not even touched upon many things that we had thought about earlier. And apart from the music stuff, like what is your journey like and all of that. But even in the music thing, like there's this discussion has opened up so many different questions. And the more when we sit and think about it, maybe there'll be a lot more
Out
follow-up
of
questions.
almost out of every question that's come, I feel like there's a possible company that can be opened.
Yeah.
That's where my mind is at
Yeah.
right now. So,
So I would definitely like I think that we can easily have a follow-on thing. Like the listeners should let us know if you want your back, and maybe if you have questions and let us know, we can discuss about those things. I'm pretty sure like that now if I sit and think about it, I'll many different things, more different the nuances will strike
100%,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Do you specifically perhaps see, like, it's very dynamically changing, right?
Yes.
But what kind of future do you perhaps see in this field? Like 20 years down the line or 10 years down the line? What do you think where is it moving towards? It's probably been a few years since you were actually involved actively in this in academia, but
Right.
Yeah. But one question
given,
that I'd say is that, or do you think that this question is way too loaded? Maybe because like for me, if someone asks me this, I like मैं अपने आप का मुझे नहीं पता मैं 10 साल के बाद क्या करूँगा पूरे फील्ड का क्या बताऊँ मैं.
I think my answer would be in general restrictive in the sense that we definitely tend to see a lot of dystopian things around us. And definitely our adrenaline is much more associated with how much scary experiences which we have. So
mm,
I actually try to think of everything in positive senses. So keeping in like optimistic nature around it, what I would want to see around in the future is how actually these things help in the therapeutic outcomes as we discussed about. Like
yeah,
as we clearly know that it is about early detection. So the way we discuss about how generative AI can help and everything can help, we already know that someone can be a neurotic character or someone can have a particular ADHD, some kind of a disorder. And then we also know, based on the research evidences, that a particular song can help a specific, like it can elicit a specific emotion or can induce a specific emotions. So maybe just curate a playlist which can actually help you in that therapeutic your experience of listening to the music instead of just going into some kind of meditation camp and actually experiencing this thing in the real time when you're doing day-to-day activity, which actually keeps you going instead of you believing that you have some kind of disease and instead of
healing
you
through
actually
music.
make it a part of living.
This actually sparked another thought in my head. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's just there. I think it's very contextual to this. When you're talking about therapy, right? Like therapy in some people's mind would be like something which is a bit major, like something that you have to
Yes,
actively go to and then like sign up for it and all of that. But even think
yes,
of on an everyday basis, you already have computers that are sensing your mood, the
right.
smartwatches that you're wearing. That's Abbhinav knows, right? We were discussing. There's a stress monitor on your watch, and
Yeah,
imagine if something like this, if something very subtle, but you have whenever your watch detects that your mood is moving towards something which is maybe not
play a
preferable,
certain kind of music.
play automatically trigger something like that, like your home devices style that. Yeah, that could be
Yeah,
a startup, right? So there is, right?
Potentially, like depending on how many people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah. I mean, even imagine like this thing, right? This can help in Yeah, you could trigger, like even in therapy, for instance, that you're removing the cognitive load of people having to think that, oh man, I'm the conscious bias that I'm having to go and step into a clinic,
Yes.
versus you just go to a resort. And then resorts could be some, like they would be great customers of this, right? They would be interested in something like this, because hospitality industry in general, like a lot of the key metric for success depends on satisfying,
Satisfaction.
making the people happy, right? A lot of the experiences are curated like that. Even the spaces that are designed, the interior spaces, the sounds that are playing, very out there thought. But the religious groups could be interested in this.
Yeah, definitely. And also we know that certain music is, as it helps in eliciting specific emotions. These actually these kind of setup can be largely used in, if not anything like a subscription-based model as an app, but at least in a hospital, where you
Yeah.
know that if there is a specific ward, and if you want to just keep motivate a patient that he just gets recovered. You know that people in past always say that music helps and this way or that helps, but now we have a clean way of telling that how it will help and what actually we
How
will
you
do
steer it,
to make it
basically.
help. Yes.
Yeah.
So we can
Yeah.
actually steer the patient's experience of actually it coming out of a specific problem. And they can actually come out very strong. And instead of they going through all those pain and silo, they would have a companion
So
in the form of music.
not just
I'm
that, right?
wondering,
Because I'll just finish my thought
yeah,
because it's related to this, right? So the discussions you're having is among, like, for people who are like who medically like would need some help, right? Like for instance, they are trying to recover. But I'm thinking, look at, imagine a recreational aspect of it, in the sense
Right.
like use people turn to many different things, right? They could turn to some activity, sports or something. People turn to psychedelics, maybe to enhance basically the neurotic state. I mean, not neurotic might be a negative word, but basically the mental state. Whereas here you have a way in which, yeah, you can use music as something that can induce, these different trance sort of state. I mean, that is known to many people, because many people know that
I
listening to
mean,
music
consciously
calms
do
them
it.
down, and or puts them in a state. But you can use this to, yeah, man, this is quite fascinating. I don't know if someone's exploring this to read up on this.
Yeah, I was just saying that, Yudhik, do you have some data around maybe healing power of music? In the sense that, are there like actively maybe in therapy or elsewhere where music is actually used either as a tool or as as a therapy in whole, right? Like, does it have that much extent of power that it alone can bring somebody out of like whatever it is, right, depending on extent of seriousness? Or is it like used as a tool somewhere? Like, I don't know, I'm not very familiar with the medical world per se.
Yeah.
So
So I would actually want to steer the question and not actually answer the right question because I don't have the actual answer for it. But what I can tell you from the
okay.
extent of research which we have tried to do was that one of our problem statement was music recommendation. So in
Hmm.
that music recommendation, what we tried to do was that most of the music recommendation in today actually take advantage of lot of tags being associated with the songs.
Hmm.
Why that was done? As I can say that it was less amount of metadata to process on. As
Okay.
the model got bigger, as the compute power got stronger, they started to incorporate, let's say, the acoustic information and the lyrics information. And in one of the research work, we actually discussed about that once we incorporate tags based, based, and emotions based, acoustic based, we are actually able to beat the state of the art by proposing a good recommendation system. But
Okay.
now, how it actually helps in these kind of setup is one case study which we did was about that we have, let's say, people music listening history, right?
Hmm.
We also have their Kate and distress scale. Kate and distress
Okay.
scale is something more about what you were talking about, that you have, let's say, a device being worn, and you're talking about
Okay.
their stress scale.
Hmm.
So what we know from the music recommendation system is that people belonging to, let's say, at-risk category of their distress scale, your music recommendation is actually better. Why that is scary is that because music who are tend to be at risk, they actually do not want to indulge in new and different open. They are not actually very open to experiences. They are trying to curb their environment in such a way that they are already familiar with the current setup, and that's what they actually want to invest in so as to keep themselves comfortable. So what we have
Okay.
seen is that when you have such kind of tendency of listening to a particular music a lot of time, this music recommendation system can actually enhance your therapeutic ways of how you are trying to deal with the music and what kind of music is actually being played out for you next. And this actually already helps you go from at risk level to no risk level. We don't have the numbers per se that how much
Mhm.
percentage is increased, but just based on our scores, just based on accuracy of our music recommendations, we actually know that when you are at risk, we are actually good at music recommendation, and we are actually not at risk. I know that you're open to experiences, and my music recommendation might not be very well in the paradigm of what you would want to hear next. So this can
Okay.
actually help steer when you can go from at risk to no risk just by changing the recommendations.
You're seeing this transition from risk to no risk?
No, we have not seen the transition, but what we have seen is that what particular music recommendation actually plays out if you belong to at risk group versus a no risk group.
Okay.
And to study the transition, you would have to have a contiguous data over time. And we didn't have the liberty of having that data at that point of time. But definitely, it would be something which would be interesting to look at.
Yeah, because that would be like more along the medical lines, right? If you can
Yes.
actually create that transition, then there's proper proof, scientific proof that music can actually be used to whatever extent heal a
Mhm.
person.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I think we have
Interesting.
cited few papers which talks about that how music in general heals, but those are
Okay.
more like a theoretical papers which might not have those numbers which we might be
Grounded
looking for.
in real world
Yes.
medical studies or something like that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and
Awesome, man. I thank
thank
you for joining us and sharing all that you've done with us. And hopefully we do justice to
yeah,
uh, spreading the word.
yeah. This is something like we definitely like. I would want to take this with respect. Thank you for giving your time and all the effort. Yeah.
Welcome. It was great speaking with both of you.